Hi, everyone. It's Carrie.
I'm Cindy. Welcome to CNC Insights with Cindy and Carrie.
Welcome to Carrie On Accessibility,
Welcome back to Seeing Blind,
where I need accessibility for both the student and the parent.
There's generally no alt text. There's a lot of barriers there that makes it extremely difficult for me to stay in the know. I would rather have a one-on-one face-to-face so that we're both on the same page and can freely have a conversation and make sure all questions and concerns are addressed.
At least for homeschooling, I don't have to worry about that as much since, I can always talk to myself.
All right. Are we live?
Hit the red button. Or what is it? Press the red button. There you go. All right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to CNC Insights with Carrie from
Carrie On Accessibility
and myself, Cindy from Seeing Blind. We have a few housekeeping notes before we get to today's topic, which is back to school. That's what's on a lot of people's minds, whether you are a parent of a school-age child or you're an adult and entering into higher education, trade schools, or just any kind of online class education, anything like that. It's just that time of the year and it's on a lot of people's minds. So before we get started with today's topic of back to school in whatever capacity that is, a few housekeeping notes. First, I want to encourage all comments and questions to be sent to our email address, which is ccinsightspodcast@gmail.com. So again, you can send all your comments and questions to ccinsightspodcast@gmail.com, and we're going to be able to respond to you, and hopefully we will be able to add your comments and questions in one of our upcoming episodes, which is going to be a live Q&A. So we're going to pull all the questions that you guys send in, and we're just going to do a kind of a Q&A. So this is going to be your all's chance to really interact with us and hear some of our answers and feedback and just what some of you in the community are responding to our conversations here on CNC Insights. So before we get started, I also wanted to just disclose, I apologize for the delay in between episodes. Carrie and I both had a bit of a rocky road there in the summertime in July. I recently lost my brother to cancer, and that was just a bit traumatic. And I know Carrie has been dealing with illnesses in her family as well. So we just had to take a little mental health and health break there to take care of our family and ourselves. So if anyone is in that situation currently right now, I hope everyone is taking care of themselves and doing what's best for your own mental health right now. So I'm taking a little break from Seeing Blind right now. So if you're like, hey, I haven't seen any content here on Seeing Blind, yeah, that's because this summer I just have been sitting it out, taking a little break, and I'm hoping to dive right back in this fall. So definitely stay tuned. Here we go. Carrie, are you ready for some back to school? We're going to share some tips and common struggles, and we're going to volley it back and forth because Carrie and I actually have two separate kind of perspectives, right? Both my kids go to public schools, and Carrie?
Yes, I homeschool my son, and both me and my sister homeschool, but I did grow up in the public school system, so I feel like I can speak a little bit to both, but as a parent, though, I do homeschool.
Yeah, so we're going to talk first about some of the common struggles that we're experiencing from both perspectives, whether you have children in private or public schools, or you are homeschooling them. And so first, let's talk about some struggles. Carrie, why don't you start us off? What are some common struggles that you face homeschooling?
Sure. So I think it would be great if we could go back and forth. First, I think a lot of people are very curious about homeschooling, and there has definitely been an uptick in people who want to do homeschooling since the pandemic. And I started homeschooling before that, before my son even technically was going to school. And it was really inspired by my sister. The thing is, it's different from state to state. So in North Carolina, where I'm based at, you have to declare your school, you just come up with a name basically and send in all your information when your children are 7 up to 16. And it's actually going to be my first year declaring since my son is going to be turning 7 soon. One huge thing is really just that learning how homeschooling works, knowing how it is in your state, and just understanding all the logistics and processes of it. And it is a pretty big learning curve if it's your first child and your first time homeschooling. So it does take some time to learn all of that. I would say that's the first struggle.
Listening to you, Carrie, I would say for me, it would be the schedule and being around my kids that much 24 hours, 7 days a week. I mean, good Lord, my kids and I think it would just like destroy our relationship. Too much time together because I'm like, gosh, it's hard for me to get them to listen to me when I say it's bath time, or something like. I mean, I can't imagine trying to get them to listen to me if I'm trying to teach them concepts that they already don't want to learn. The last person I feel like they're going to listen to is me. So I am so respectful and I so honor all those parents out there who have the desire to homeschool because I'm not that mom. I'm not that right person. And that's okay. I feel like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. And this is one of those things as parents that you do what works for your family. And for me, it was definitely public school. So this is the first year both of mine are going to be in elementary school. So I have a 5-year-old entering into kindergarten, and my oldest is going into second grade. So we are very dependent on, of course, the bus systems.
Mm.
And one of the struggles that I have is, for example, our school, this is sort of a district, county by county, state by state thing as well. We have for kindergartners a phase in week. So each kindergarten is assigned like 1 or 2 half days that they come in the first week. And then they assign them a teacher and then they all go to school together as they normally would. But during that phase in week, there's no bus transportation.
Mm.
And I am currently fighting with the school, like, well, how am I going to get my son there? I'm blind. My husband is also an educator. He cannot leave his class that's just starting up as well to provide transportation when this is supposed to be a service. This is something we depend on. So currently, the first week for this phase in, he's going to miss 2 half days getting to know his teacher because there's no bus service. So I'm upset over that. And this really kind of harkens back to the days of preschool as well, because there is no transportation services for preschool. So I feel like there's a lot of parents in the not just blind community, the disabled community, who with transportation issues, they aren't able to get their children to preschool or private school or whatever the case may be due to the lack of transportation.
Definitely. I remember being in public school and struggling with the bus system as well when there were half days or when we had to go home for certain reasons. And, my mom, she worked from New York when we lived in New Jersey. So she would have to take off of work to come. And, I would be one of the only ones left at school waiting for my mom to come and pick me up because my dad was blind and, he couldn't just come and get us. And even for people who, they don't have a parent that could drive. They don't have a parent that can take off of work. Bus systems need to do better. That's such a struggle. I'm sorry.
I agree. And I think those poor bus drivers are underpaid and undersupported.
Mhm.
And which is, that's usually when there is those types of issues why you see a very high turnover rate. And I know it is not an uncommon issue for many school districts in the country to have a good supply of bus driver employees that are returning year after year after year. It's just a high turnover or just unfulfilled positions out there. Yeah, I really wish that system could be improved upon for parents with disabilities and just overall consistent service for our country.
You would think that for homeschool, that wouldn't be such a big issue since, of course, you're doing it at home, right? But there's a lot of homeschool groups, there's different co-ops, and a lot of people have the kind of misconception that homeschooling is something that you do by yourself as a parent, and there's a lot of other people involved as well. So, I take my son to different homeschool homeschooling events and groups, and there's actually a lot of different activities around here that we can go and do. And transportation is still a struggle. We don't even have a bus system for school, so I have to go and advocate for it. I have to go use Uber. I have to find a way, like, who could give us a ride, whether it's another parent who's also wanting to go to that event or is part of that group. But a lot of the time they have other children and their cars don't always accommodate like two more people. And so that's a struggle, just finding ways to get to places that we want to go. And then once you do get to, whether it's a museum or an exhibit or an activity center, those places are always the most accessible. And sometimes I feel much more comfortable when I maybe go with my sister or go with my mom or somebody that I know well first, so that I can be familiar with a place and then maybe later go with just me and my son, kind of scouting it out first.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, I never even thought about that for homeschooling parents. That's almost, I guess, a common misconception because you just educated me on that, Carrie. I just assumed, yeah, these people, they're, educating from home, and then the rest is just sort of like free play, normal family stuff or whatever the case may be. Yeah, you don't really ever think about field trips and museums and all the things that a lot of these kids get to do in public or private schools.
Oh
But
yeah, we love going.
really homeschool, you have,
Mhm.
yeah, more opportunity to do that. But yeah, without transportation, that's a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when we went to the beach, it's like, oh, let's learn about seashells. Like everything is kind of a learning opportunity, which is really fun. And I think when you make the educational experience something that you can see and touch and try, it's just a lot of fun, and the kids have a lot of fun, and the parents maybe have to clean more messes and everything, but it's still such a joy to see your children and having fun while learning.
That's awesome. So what's another struggle for you?
I would say when you're homeschooling, there's a lot of helpful resources out there, but a lot of the materials for both parents and students are just not accessible. And the thing is, a lot of homeschooling parents and people who make materials, they make PDFs and images, and especially on like websites like Teachers Pay Teachers, where you can
Mm,
sell and buy a lot of different materials, whether it's flashcards or learning resources or games that you can print out and things like that. They're not always very accessible, so that's a pretty big struggle. Or even just getting your homeschooling books that you need, and that material is just a physical book, and it's a struggle, right? I either have to scan it or use a CCTV, maybe use OCR to read it. I guess we'll go into the tips more, but I try to contact publishers to try to get an accessible version, or I look if there's alternatives.
yeah, there's definitely improvement in that area. I feel like there's effort as far as accessibility for students in public and private schools. So, for example, in public schools, they can have IEPs or 504 plans to meet their academic goals and making sure they get their needs and the resources to meet those needs so that they can achieve their goals. However, there's nothing for the parent, and none of those types of accommodations and accessible resources translate over to parents with disabilities.
Hmm.
So, my children currently are sighted. They have no disability on record. And it's frustrating because right now, for example, there is an app that the elementary school uses to communicate. They post messages to everybody and the stories, and share photos and slideshows or messages, just general announcements. And there's also a section within the app that you can message individual teachers. And for the most part, I find the messaging one-on-one accessible, but a lot of the times it's the same kind of thing. If a teacher's posting a resource or they're sharing slides or something or a PDF or an image, there's generally no alt text. The PDF is not programmatically correct to be accessible for my screen reader. There's a lot of barriers there that makes it extremely difficult for me to stay in the know. And it's so frustrating when I speak to other parents. They're like, oh, yeah, it's on that app. And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's great," but it must have been one of the millions of things that I interact with on the app that just says button, 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 or you just blank. It doesn't give me any description at all, or I can't access it.
Do you find that, because this is how I feel with a lot of the materials, that for students, there's more of an effort put in to make it more accessible? But then when I look for a teacher's manual or things for parents specifically, that's really when there's a lot more accessibility barriers.
Absolutely. And that's really the frustrating thing because, age correlates with the rate
Mm.
of disabilities. The older a person is, the higher risk that they are of entering into this beautiful minority group of the disabled community, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like naturally there's going to be more parents out there than kids with disability, just statistically. And so
Mhm.
you would think that, they would serve them equally and just do their best to try to pick accessible formats and apps and have at least someone over the posts and things making sure there's quality assurance there and all things posted and communicated are done so through an accessible way, making sure that alternatives are provided. If it's something with the app or that's too labor intensive, then hey, can we work out an alternative method? And teachers, bless their hearts, I have so much admiration and respect for teachers. They're overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. And so, if there's any teachers out there listening, my hat goes off to you guys. I know you guys are in full gear, and I so applaud you and all that you are able to achieve and do. Little resources and support. And the last thing that I want to do, but I almost feel like I have to because I have no other alternative, is to ask my children's teacher to please communicate with me one-on-one through the app any important messages. If there is something that needs to be signed, please let me know you're sending something home that needs my signature. Otherwise, I don't notice it in the gobs and gobs of paperwork that comes home with my children every day, whether it's schoolwork or just flyers, advertisements, or this and that. I sometimes can't tell the difference between what needs my signature, or if I need to send money for a special event, or something always falls through the cracks. And so I have to depend on the teachers to send me a one-on-one message, and that's just more tedious tasks for them to do, something else to file away and to remember to do, and more time out of their day that I wish was not put on the teacher, but I'd have no other resource. I have no other alternative at this point.
Yes, and both me and my son are visually impaired, so I'm always on both sides where I need accessibility for both the student and the parent. And as a homeschooling mom, I feel that I can really empathize with what my son is going through with school. I know what's working for him. I am super willing to accommodate and find accommodations and try new things and try different ways of approaching things, try different assistive technology, try different methods, try different apps, all sorts of things. But in a way, even though I'm so willing, there's a lot less resources when you're homeschooling. I don't have the public school system to lean on for equipment. And I'm in a very, I feel, privileged position where I do have a lot of AT at my disposal because of kind of what I do. But there are a lot less resources. You have to advocate, you have to look for them yourself. Sometimes there are different special grants or scholarships, but those aren't handed to you. Those aren't given to you. You don't know about them until you go and hunt them down and search for them and maybe look for other parents that may know certain resources. And it's something that you have to spend time actually researching. And so, in a way, it's like really helpful that I kind of have that power to decide what's working, how to fix it, really make it accommodating and tailored to what my son needs. But at the same time, my hands are tied because of the limited resources.
Mm. Yeah, especially since we all know blindness is a spectrum, and I'm sure
Mhm,
you both have separate needs and separate AT preferences and
mhm.
things like that. So, yeah, trying to accommodate yourself while also accommodating him and finding what works for you both. I can't imagine. Yeah, that's got to be a juggling act for sure. So, that sort of touches onto one of my next points, which is supplies. I find it so difficult. I am an online shopper typically.
Same.
The last thing on the planet, it is my version of hell, my friends, to go shopping in a store. I can almost leave it at that, go shopping in a store. But go shopping in a store in the school supplies section before school starts.
It's a mess.
Madhouse. It is a mess. It is a disaster. You never know what's in stock, what's out of stock. Wait, is the teacher has the specific brand? Does that mean I can't get the cheap brand? I mean, I'm so confused. I learned too, FYI, my friends, Amazon in my research this year did not impress me with their school supplies pricing. I found much better deals at places like Walmart, Target, and other
Mm.
similar stores. Amazon was not priced well, in my personal opinion. So I avoided school supplies on Amazon this year and kind of hit more of the just delivery. And keep an eye open. This is sort of a little gold nugget tip that I'm just throwing in here early while it's on my mind. But a lot of states have maybe a day, a weekend. Tennessee had a weekend where school supplies were tax free. And that also includes online purchases.
Ooh.
So I was able to order all of our school supplies tax free. And I didn't have to go into the store, fight the mad crowds, rush out of stock things. I just ordered it all online, had it shipped during my state's tax free weekend. And that's what I did this year because Amazon was not impressing me. And I was not about to fight those silly people in these aisles trying to fight for like the sharpest pair of scissors. I can't do it. I can't do it.
If you wanna use Amazon, you can. If you're gonna get, like, 20 notebooks, maybe
Yes.
it'll be cheaper.
If you've got like 9 kids, then by all means, Amazon's probably the best.
I have Walmart Plus, and so often things are just a lot cheaper on Walmart and just having it either delivered from store or through shipping, and it's just a lot cheaper. Oh my goodness. I think I saw a binder on Amazon that was like $10. I'm like, are you serious? Just one binder? And it's not like it's a fancy, the ones that have the zipper and it's a fabric. No, it was just like a plain binder. I'm like, what? Who's buying this?
It was like 4 or 5 like multicolored, like plastic, 2 pocket folders, just general folders that the kids need for school. And it was like 4 times the price on
Mhm.
Amazon than when I priced it on Walmart and Target. I mean, it was
And you would think the quality is better since it's more expensive, but no, it's the same.
yeah, totally the same. Have different branding, but trust me, plastic folder is a plastic folder at the end of the day. All right, so let's move on. I think we've really covered a lot of the common issues that a
Mhm.
lot of parents with children, and granted, high schoolers, we don't have ours in high school yet, but I'm
Mhm.
sure there's probably lots of similar struggles at that time as well. And hopefully, hey, if you all have any suggestions for us for when we get to that point, send us an email, give us as many tips and tricks, share the love. Let us know what we're in for. I'd appreciate that heads up and send that in an email to us. But let's move on to some of the tips and things that we have kind of learned entering into the school systems, whichever capacity that is. So I'll start this one off. I absolutely think it is a must to request a one on one prior to school starting, and that can include the principal or not. But I always feel like being upfront and clear with my expectations and accommodations, it starts the school year off so much better, and I'm able to hold them more accountable when I say, hey, look, we had a meeting about this and I explained what accommodations and what level of accessibility I require to support my children's education and to continue their ongoing academic goals from home and to support the work that you're doing here, but you have to meet me halfway. And a lot of the times, I feel like a lot of schools do not do one-on-ones. We just had almost like registration slash orientation, which is really, really weird because we still had to register and do everything online.
Mhm.
But then we went to the school and we had to fill out the exact same paperwork all over again, which I did online. So a lot of redundancies there that ticked me off. But it's like I had 5 seconds in a room of 50 people for my daughter to meet her second grade teacher, and that was it. I didn't really get a chance to explain to her, hey, this is really what I need from you this year. Or if you notice something's not getting turned in or you need money from me for an event or something, this is probably why it fell through the crack and I need you to communicate one-on-one with me. And so I've had to send an email to her. And those are conversations that I don't really want to send via email or message. I would rather have a one-on-one face-to-face so that we're both on the same page and can freely have a conversation and make sure all questions and concerns are addressed and expectations are set prior to school starting. And I also like to pull in the principal because I really feel like them understanding and knowing, hey, it's not just the students with disabilities that I need to be concerned about. I have a parent that has a disability and they are expressing their needs. And I want them to realize that there's a responsibility there as well. And there's a disconnect because most parents don't get a lot of communication or contact with principals generally. And I feel like that needs to change, especially in our own advocacy as parents with disabilities.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I remember my parents having to advocate for that and really having to fight for accommodations to be able to speak one-on-one with teachers. And I think that's incredibly important for educators to know and understand that it takes everybody. It takes the team to be accommodating to everybody. At least for homeschooling, I don't have to worry about that as much since, I can always talk to myself. I'm the teacher. um,
We talk to ourselves as moms daily.
Yeah. But the struggle, I think, is, and what I do is I always try to plan ahead and organize everything before
Mm.
the school year even begins, because I need to make sure that I have all the materials, that I can make it in an accessible way or find it in an accessible format, whether that's a reading material that I need to find on Audible or Bard or even submit to Bookshare or find at the library if it's available, and just hunting down where I can find it. And also, the best things that works well for me is, instead of a physical book, using an accessible PDF. And sometimes even when it's not all that accessible, at least it's something. It's something. It's an improvement
Mm.
over OCR using something like Seeing AI or Lookout or any of those OCR apps. It's still
Hmm.
better to have a PDF. Maybe it's not in the right order and it's kind of weird, but sometimes you can make it work. And sometimes with a little bit of help from maybe Be My Eye as a volunteer or something, that also helps. And sometimes I haven't had that much luck with this, but if you talk to a publisher, sometimes they can kind of help and sometimes not. Like when it's when you're part of the public school system, I feel the publishers are more willing to create accommodations and give accessible formats. But unfortunately, when it's homeschooling materials, they are not as accommodating. So you kind of have to make your own path there, whether it's just creating it in an accessible format yourself using an app or using a CCTV. Or what I've done also is I've taken pictures with like a scanning app, and I just have the book in different files that my son has to read.
Mm.
And that has really helped. And so he can just zoom in. We're using a tablet right now. He can just zoom right in, and as much as he needs to, into whatever it is, the material that he has to read. And that has been working a lot. Also, with like certain worksheets and things, I'll just have him use a stylus and write answers directly on the worksheet that's scanned in.
Yeah, that's
And that way we
brilliant.
can also invert the colors and have it in dark mode, because that's also something that's helpful for him. And the stylus and the markings that you make on the PDF, you can make that as thick as you need. So instead of using maybe a 2020 pen or the bold writing pens, you can just have it as thick and whatever color that you want it to be. Which he really enjoys changing the colors, which I'm like, just pick one. Please just pick one color for this worksheet. Stop changing colors every answer.
Whatever it takes to do the work.
But it takes like 5 minutes to do the worksheet, but 20 minutes to choose the right color.
That's hilarious.
Sometimes it can be a distraction.
Yeah, I get that.
What do you think are some more tips for you?
One thing, especially for a lot of the younger students these days that just require water bottles, or a lot of the teachers say, label everything. If your children are coming with a jacket, label it. If they have gloves, label it. If they have a lunchbox, label it. If they have a school pencil bag, label it. Backpack, everything. And so I'm like, okay. Well, letters have to be the size of my hand for me to see it. I mean, I have enough muscle memory to write things, but I don't know how clear or legible my handwriting is much anymore these days. So I've been like racking my brain, like, how do I label things? And is it going to be pretty enough? So I just got on Etsy, and ordered, some custom labels. And I found this really cool stitching gadget. I hate sewing. I can sew as a blind mom, but I definitely am not great at it. Don't prefer it. But I found this kind of like a stitch gun, and it's on my Amazon storefront. But this thing has been perfect because I just kind of like put the gun up to their little custom badges on their backpack and all their things. And I either added like an adhesive, I glued it, or I used my stitch gun and just stitched it on. And it's worked. I don't have to worry about, okay, is this legible? Did I do this? And it's something that I can also remove if I want to go to resell, because backpacks and things like that, my kids are getting to the point where they're wanting to ask for a new one every school year. And I'm like, yeah, but this one from last year is a great condition still. Like, really? I mean, so I'll try to, just resell that one and recycle. So it's a lot easier to do that when names are not permanently on the actual supplies and things like that. I've also found it helpful to braille label a lot of their things. So for example, some of their water bottles look very similar. So I have brailled on the very bottom of their water bottles so that my braille system doesn't distract them, or it's not anything that is too distracting, like, hey, what are those bumps on the, I don't want to be a distraction necessarily in the school setting. So I put my braille labels in very discreet places, like on the very bottom. If I need to, for my own personal identification, when I'm pulling things out of the dishwasher, for example, which backpack does this one go in? I can feel the bottom of the braille. So that's a few of my tips, and I'll do one more to wrap mine up, and then you can bring it home, girl. My last tip is regarding the white cane, because there are times I don't need my white cane, and there are times that I do, usually in the dark. But when I travel to my child's school, I always have my white cane, whether I need it or not, because number one, it is my way of advocating. It's my way of representing. It's my way of busting those misconceptions and normalizing disability. I feel like so many children, especially in school settings, are masking if they have a disability. They don't quite have the communication skills. Nothing's normalized. They feel like the oddball. And any chance that I can help represent the disabled community in all of its many facets, I want to do that. And I want to open that opportunity up for questions, for those awkward moments. For example, last year, one of my daughter's friends came up to me and she said, "Are you really blind?" And I could tell her parents were so embarrassed. And I'm like, actually, yeah, I legally, by law, I meet certain requirements and definitions that I can say, yes, I am blind, and that's okay. And it was an education experience, but I had my white cane and I showed it to her. It's like, this is my white cane. This is what helps me get around. And it was a great learning experience. But here's the thing. I'm going to open up a little bit of can of worms here, but I'm not going to dive deep because I don't want to get get political or anyway, but the state of Tennessee, they passed the whole critical race theory thing. And whether you are for or against that, or if you don't know what it is, I highly encourage you to research critical theory. But basically, because it is a slippery slide there, they passed it in the state of Tennessee, and all minorities, when it comes to the law, like if one group has a law that is, I guess, passed that relates to one, it's a slippery slope when it becomes applied to all. And I asked about a year or so ago the same school if I could come and do like a little education on blindness and disability and etiquette and just normalizing it and speaking to my daughter's class, if not the whole school, and just kind of doing like an assembly thing and just express to them, hey, I'm a public speaker. I would love to come and educate and represent the blind community. And they basically declined me for those reasons, that they felt it was not appropriate. I know it's because it hits a little close to home with the critical theory laws that were recently debated last year during the last year's school schedule. Yeah, it's very frustrating being denied that. So any opportunity that I can go and represent the disabled community in any capacity that is, whether it's just me showing up without my white cane and just advocating for myself and my needs, it could be as simple as that. But I do have a white cane, and I am not afraid to bring it to my child's school, and I definitely don't want her to be ashamed or embarrassed by her mom having a white cane. And I feel like if I model my confidence and never show any kind of shame or embarrassment and help educate my daughter that she shouldn't as well, and what it means to advocate for her mom and stand up for individuals with disabilities, like that's the kind of daughter I want to raise, and that's the kind of exposure that I want her friends to have as well in their education and academic setting.
Definitely. And I think it can be very similar with a lot of homeschooling groups. They don't really know what to do with a blind mom and a blind son. We also face that kind of challenge. And I want my son to also grow up confident, whether he has a cane or I do or not, and be able to speak about his disability and mine comfortably. And this is something that we're still going through and working through. Whenever somebody does ask, oh, what's wrong with your eyes? Or how come you can't see? And we're to a point where there are some kids that actually accommodate without even being told to or being asked to. They're like, over here, and they'll verbally say things. And sometimes children are more willing to adopt this kind of accommodation and just like understanding more than parents, more than other
Right.
parents, and more than adults. It really depends, though. And I think it's just that education of making people aware that first, it's okay. It's okay to ask. The thing that really bothers me is when parents or other adults, they're like, shh, 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 shh. Quiet, don't ask them. Don't go close to them, they're blind and they
Mm-hmm.
like start whispering behind your back like I can hear every word you're saying.
Right. You're just making it more awkward.
Exactly. Let's actually talk about it. I think that's what's important. And I would just say, as my last tip for other homeschooling parents out there, whether it's your child that is visually impaired or blind or has another disability, or you are a parent that has a disability that wants to homeschool, I really strongly recommend that you find a group and find other people who are facing similar challenges as you
Mm.
and find that support system, because other people have already explored different curriculums, different resources, and a lot of other parents have really great ideas that I would never have been able to come up with. And it's just that community really helps. First, it can help with resources and materials and things like that, and just different ways of doing things with your child and as a parent, but also just having that encouragement, knowing that there are totally blind parents out there who have successfully educated their own children all the way up to high school, and they found ways to do it. And that is really encouraging. And I would recommend you guys to find that kind of support. And there are also Facebook groups out there, like a blind homeschooling group, and I'm sure there's other ones out there as well.
Yeah, definitely finding a community, no matter what capacity your kids are being educated, I think is vital. It's key. You're right. Great support systems on Facebook and just lots of creators that share tips, tricks, and hacks and things
Hmm.
that are really great resources. So definitely forming that community, and don't be afraid to ask if you have questions or struggles. Don't be afraid to ask your community. You're welcome to send questions to our email at ccinsightspodcast@gmail.com. And if there's anything that we can assist or recommend, we'll definitely do so, or even post your question to our audiences here and see what we can get in response and share with you guys in the Q&A. So I highly recommend you guys search out your communities in whichever way that they apply and use that as a great resource to help you in your endeavors of growing and raising highly well-educated kiddos. In our next podcast, we're going to tackle higher education. So we're going to continue this on. So put a pin in this, my friends, and stay tuned for the next episode when we discuss higher education, whether that's going to college, a trade school, or anything like that, or just getting out on your own, whether you have a disability or you're a parent and your child has a disability and it's time for them to leave the home nest.
Hmm.
All of those types of concerns and anxieties, you're welcome to send your emails to us and we'll do our best to answer those. That's going to be the next episode, so stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's topic. I hope we shared some valuable content and food for thought. Carrie, do you have anything else to add?
I think that about covers it. And also, maybe next time we can even cover adults who want to go back to school, because I've definitely gone through that, and that college experience, higher education experience as an adult, as well as when I was younger. So I'm really excited to chat more about that.
Absolutely. All right, my friends, thanks for listening to CNC Insights. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the realities
of blind ability.
and the realities of blind abilities.